Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review, the digitally digested segment for the Sony Cyber-shot HX90V. Priced originally at $428 when it launched roughly a year ago, this was very quickly received as the champion of its class, which is a pocketable point-and-shoot mega-zoom camera, a 30 times optical lens, Carl Zeiss glass at that, with a fully articulating display, so if you want to capture selfies or vlog, video, 1080p only, no 4K here, as well as make use of its built-in OLED viewfinder, which you can see extends out like so. You also have a built-in flash. GPS is on board for geotagging. There's the flash right there, which really can't bounce. That's one critique I have of the camera, among others. But again, incredibly compact, competent still performance, geotagging with GPS, Wi-Fi, and NFC on board. You also have very good stabilization when it comes to that 1080p video that it captures. So even though it doesn't capture 4K, which I wish that it did, that's one of my critiques of this camera, the 1080p video that it puts out is just amazing compared to just about anything else that you would shoot in its class handheld. And that is consistent with this camera. And the stills are nothing to scoff at either. I mean, granted, this is a sub 1-inch sensor. This isn't going to put out the image quality of Sony's RX lineup of Cyber-shot cameras, meaning the 100 or RX10. But for a Cyber-shot in the HX class, this is about as good as it gets. The HX that we're looking at here also gave up the hot shoe, so no additional accessories are going to be mounted. The hot shoe on the HX90V that I covered was right here. Of course, Sony did away with that. Now, Sony has launched an HX80, no V in that designation of that model because there is no GPS. It's $350, basically identical to this camera. It has everything you see here, but no GPS and no control ring on the lens. As far as I'm aware of, that's pretty much it. So if neither of those items are essential to you, the HX80 is definitely a less expensive route to go. Then again, on sale, since this camera has been around now for roughly a year, you may be able to find it for nearly the same price. Sony has tried to maintain that this camera keep its retail price for that reason. You can see the lens extending right there, screen articulating, a little bit of my reflection there in that monitor, and just see how quickly we can go all the way out to, well, in terms of optical reach, we're going to hit the cap right there at 720 millimeters, and then you can have clear image zoom as well as digital zoom. It's really up to you, which can effectively double the reach of this camera, but because it doesn't have a very large sensor, you're not going to have that much cropping capability with it. If it had a larger sensor, well then, using clear image zoom or digital zoom would be a pleasure. Quick to focus, even though it's using a contrast system only. And again, that viewfinder is really something that started with the RX 100 series, and this camera was blessed with. And of course now the HX80 for even less, also blessed with that capability, because in a small form factor, you really don't expect to see something like this. Now Nikon does have a model that is going to compete directly with this. I believe it's the A900, 35 times optical zoom. It will shoot 4K video, but I doubt that the lens will be in the same class as the Sony. The Zeiss glass pairing that Sony's been putting into their Cyber-shot lineup, in my opinion, has always been superior to Nikon's point-and-shoot class of cameras. Of course, I'm not speaking about interchangeable, but again, simply about point-and-shoot. So if you are after the smallest pocketable mega zoom camera on the market, even a year later, the HX90V is pretty much the best thing that you can pick up. Panasonic also has some interesting options out there that do capture 4K video. Another critique that some will have, no touchscreen on the display. I personally don't care. I don't think it would be bad to have it, but it's not a game breaker for me. If it were, I wouldn't own as many Sony cameras as I do. Also, no RAW capabilities here, and that I could make the argument for, even though the sensor is really small and I don't really see a reason to necessarily have RAW capability. I know a lot of people spending over $400 on a camera do expect to see RAW capability. So that's something Sony probably should have thought about, especially with the launch of the HX80. It would have given even more differentiation between the two models, which again, right now, seem to really just come down to what I've mentioned already, which is the lack of GPS in the 80, as well as the lack of the control ring on the lens. Otherwise, slightly a couple millimeters smaller, and the exact same 18 megapixel sensor, which does a good job both in the still and video world. You've got your mode dial right here at the top, and as you can see, bring it into focus for you, auto intelligent mode, video mode, panorama mode, everything that you would expect, the different scenes, and manual controls. The flash, again, competent, but I would have liked to have seen a hot shoe on here, but how could they really accommodate it? The body of this camera is so small. This is truly pocketable for all of those people that always say the RX100 line has never truly been pocketable, especially as it's gotten larger. This is the opposite. Another thing people complain about is the grip. The HX50V had a nice big rubber grip, this low profile, and I can agree with that. This is fairly small, but when you think about the RX100 line where there's literally no grip, I'm certainly happier that something is here as opposed to nothing. And I wouldn't mind if I saw a grip like this built into the RX100 line. I think it would be a fairly nice complement to what already is the best point-and-shoot camera on the market. But otherwise, that pretty much sums it up for the HX90V. I'll take you into the menus quickly just so that you can see exactly what you're working with here. Get things into focus, and you'll see right now in terms of, I'm going to jump right into the settings. So 18 megapixels, 4:3 aspect ratio, quality, again, no options other than fine and standard. Panorama size and direction. You can see the file format for video. As I mentioned before, XAVC SHD is going to yield the highest quality, 60p, 50 megabits per second, and the video is really stunning. I mean, just from a video perspective, this camera with that 30 times optical reach is amazing. I mean, 720 millimeters of 1080p video at that quality is really impressive. And that, to me, is one of the biggest selling points. On the still side of things, of course, I'd rather use something like the RX10 Mark III, but the RX10 Mark III or any of the other competing products out there, even the Nikon offering I mentioned before, isn't going to fit in your pocket as easily as this camera will. Of course, the RX10 won't fit in any pocket, but point made. But everything else is here that you would expect. The traditional Sony menu system, I've gone through all of this before. Steady shot. Because there's no 4K, you don't have a problem employing intelligent active. You can use that all the time. And really, this camera offers a lot, which is why Sony has kept it alive as long as they have. I mean, they could have come out with a replacement model, but the HX80 clearly was a complementary model, which is something Sony's been doing a lot lately. They want to keep cameras that sell well on the market longer than a year rather than continuing to create incremental updates. So it'll be interesting to see what they do eventually come up with in order to replace this camera in terms of its specifications and overall capabilities. I'm assuming something with 4K video is going to come out, maybe a longer lens. I don't expect or anticipate a larger sensor. That would be great if they could do that. That would just be an ideal pocket camera for me. That's kind of what the Panasonic ZS100 has become for me, but the ZS100 is significantly larger than this and has nowhere near the reach. You're talking about 10 times optical zoom versus 30 times optical zoom, granted a larger sensor. But that pretty much sums things up. Again, you can't go wrong with this camera if it's the camera you are looking for. The built-in EVF is great, flash is solid, good manual controls. Again, the ability to use that fully articulating display to capture whatever you need to, whether it's just a selfie still or video. You really have a lot of flexibility, and again, in the most compact body of any point-and-shoot mega zoom on the market. I mentioned the GPS. Again, that is what the V in the HX90V stands for. V as in Victor is the GPS function. So many people ask me about that. And then when we swing around down here to the bottom, you can see the battery and SD card slot. Batteries are the same standard Sony's been using for all Cyber-shot cameras right now. So nothing different there, and an HDMI out port right here. And that's pretty much it. Charging is on body. So, the charger is right there for those of you that missed. Don't love that it's that the charging cable is at the tripod mount, but certainly could be worse. Remember, this is a point-and-shoot Cyber-shot, and it's not in the RX class of cameras, so you have to have reasonable expectations in terms of what Sony is expecting you to do with this and who they're really targeting, which is why, the HX80 is out there now to get people that don't want to necessarily spend the amount this camera retails for because they don't care about GPS, because GPS has always been one of those things that I loved, but a lot of users didn't care about. They would say, oh, I've got my cell phone. I can geotag with my cell phone. Oh, that's a little bit of a hassle. And then you have people that just don't care about geotagging whatsoever. So that's why I guess Sony decided, let's put out a revamped model, basically the same, and cut that out. It'll save them some money. They'll sell the camera for less. I would have liked to have seen something a little more creative, but either way, that's why the HX90V is still relevant, and really more so, still the best camera, in my opinion, of its class, if you do not require 4K video. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button, and as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.